What can you tell me about where the inventories linger specifically, geographically, heavy industry, retail?
Very good. Ed, good talking to you. First of all, I don't understand where this inventory commentary is really coming from. We saw this, I think, in the press yesterday. Maybe I'll use this opportunity to explain. The majority of our business, handsets, we're working very hard to diversify the business. We're making good progress, but still the majority of the business handsets. And handsets, we have seen that inventory had actually stabilized since last quarter. I think what we see in the results, especially with the beat and raise in EPS, is that handsets are getting back to normal. We're happy with the health of the Android ecosystem. Premium tier, it's strong with HN3, and we still see that in the numbers. IoT, we talk about industrial inventory actually before every other company. Actually, we were some of the first ones to talk about it. It's still a smaller percent of our business. We'd like it to be bigger, but we had said that that is the lowest quarter, and we expect to see growth in the coming quarters. So, yeah, I don't understand this comment on inventory. We're happy with the results, and we're happy with a number of the analyst revisions that actually came out this morning on the stock.
I'm just reading the transcript from the earnings call, right? And you said second half of the fiscal year, as we see the inventory kind of normalizing in the IoT context. A positive area was China. You promised that we would get an uptick in China sales. We did get that. Does it reflect customers in China having been through inventories, or is this a commitment to forward ordering, signs that those end markets have demand?
Yes, this is a great question. And I want to start by saying we have two vectors that are very encouraging. One vector is the premium tier has proven to be resilient, even within the macro uncertainty. And it shows that users, when they go buy their next phone, they want a better phone. The second thing is we're starting to see the first innings of Gen AI. Some of the use cases are starting to come in, and that has brought some excitement. Some of our customers had record pre-sales of their new devices with HN3. And what we see in China right now, I think there was a lot of concern in the past about Huawei coming back to the phone business. But what's actually happening is Huawei is increasing the size of the TAM, and our customers are holding share and seeing opportunities in the premium tier, and that's reflected in the quarter. We have a lot of orders of HN3, especially for phones that launch or are launching in the market. We're happy. We're just cautiously optimistic since we don't know how the second half of the year in phones in China is going to unfold.
Cristiano, how do you navigate geopolitics when it comes to China, not just macroeconomy?
We just do business. I think we focus on what we can control. I think we're happy that we have a strong relationship with China. Our technology is differentiated and is helping, I think, both sides. One, it's business, it's export of semis for the U.S., for China. It has been growth for technology. We have not been impacted to date by any of the restrictions. And as we diversify the company going from handsets to automotive and industrial, I think we see our China business expanding as well.
Let's go back to the bread and butter that is phones, though, and I think about Apple's earnings coming after the bell, everyone wanting to get some sort of steer on where the consumer is at right now. And ultimately, you've said, look, consumer, we're recovering in phones. But how excited are consumers to renew, do you think? And how much will this manage to carry you on into the rest of 2024?
Look, we don't want to make a prediction. Phone cycles is very difficult to make predictions. There are a couple of things that we know it will happen. Once every 10 years, you have a generation of wireless. We've just been to the 5G transition. But the early signs of Gen AI use cases are actually exciting. I think you saw Samsung launching S24 with a number of Gen AI use cases running on the device. Same thing happened in China, just mentioned about that. So that could create an interesting opportunity for upgrade cycle in phones. It's just hard to predict the timing.
For our Bloomberg television and radio audience, we're speaking to Qualcomm CEO Cristiano Amon. Cristiano, you and I have talked about on-device processing of generative AI tools and running of large language models, on-device airplane mode. When does that business that you're involved in show up in the financials?
Yeah, the way you should think about the financial impact, especially if you think about phones, is really uh, a premium tier becoming a larger percentage of the market, and we're kind of starting to see that. And then the other one is more silicon content. I think our ASPs increase on the chipset, and that has a positive contribution for the business. And the dynamic that we see with the success of 8 Gen 3 is just the first signs of the opportunity. Just to be cautious that we still need to see a lot of use cases develop.
Lots of partnerships and deals kind of talked about on the call. When we think about names like Apple and Samsung and the handset makers in China, look at the history of Qualcomm. Can you kind of guarantee investors that you can continue forward on the deals and avoid the legal entanglements you've had in prior years?
All right, so you mentioned partnerships. I think we have two very important conversations, and I want to make a distinction. I think the first one is our licensing business. And we have been saying that the licensing business, which has been the reason we have been in a number of disputes in the past, is very stable. It's one of the most stable times that we had since the beginning of the licensing business. And in the quarter, we announced three very important milestones. One is we saw an extension of the Apple license agreement. That means that Apple is paying license for the Qualcomm standard essential patents, and that's regardless of using or not using a Qualcomm chip. We also saw two Chinese significant customers renewing the license agreement, which speaks to the value of the Qualcomm intellectual property portfolio, even in China, in the middle of the geopolitics. That's a very positive sign to investors. Now, the second part of the question is about partnerships. What's exciting about Qualcomm, and I know we spend a lot of time talking about handsets, but auto, there is a lot of reports on the peers of a decline in auto. If you look at this quarter, we actually had record auto revenues with 31% growth year over year when the whole market is down. And that speaks to the number of chips we've been making in auto for the future of the automotive industry. And that's an important metric where the future of Qualcomm is going to be.